Jai Gurudev. So, how can spiritual practices help us choose duty over personal desire as Queen Elizabeth did throughout the crown? Jai Gurudev, yes, Queen Elizabeth's dedication to duty above all mirrors the spiritual path of Karma Yoga, selfless action without attachment to results. His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji teaches that duty becomes a joy when the mind is calm and clear. So, darshan, kriya, and meditation calm the emotional turbulence that makes desires overpowering. When we breathe deeply and align with our inner stillness, clarity dawns, one becomes established in dharma. In the crown, we see Elizabeth sacrifice personal joys, her marriage, her youth, for service. A similar spiritual mindset grounded in daily practice gives us the inner strength to act from responsibility, not fleeting desire. Vedic practices like Sandhya Vandanam, Upanayana, and Gayatri Japa are designed to anchor us in daily remembrance of our soul's duties or Swadharma. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said, Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara. Speak the truth, follow Dharma. When performed sincerely, rituals like Agni Karyam cleanse subtle impressions that tether us to egoic cravings. Just like Elizabeth received counsel from the church and commonwealth, Vedic rituals give one access to divine guidance. This sustained inner discipline transforms duty from burden to sacred offering. The crown shows the isolation of leadership. How can one manage loneliness and inner heaviness as a leader? Gurudev reminds us that loneliness disappears when we are connected to the self. Meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, and Sahat Samadhi anchor us in our own presence, filling us. The inner void leaders often carry emotional burdens they cannot share, but the breath can heal that heaviness. Queen Elizabeth often sits in silence in the series, a reflection of internalized conflict with guided meditation. One can process these emotions without suppression or despair. Regular sadhana prevents burnout and rekindles emotional resilience. True strength is not in never feeling alone, but in transcending it through inner awareness. In our tradition, solitude is sacred, not suffering. Sayam Sadhana, a Vedic retreat program, teaches the art of being alone without loneliness. When Elizabeth walks alone through palaces and gardens, we see echoes of the rishis walking in forests. Recalls and there are three times a day rich spiritual alignment invokes divine presence in one's solitude. The Gayatri Mantra links one with the cosmic intelligence, reducing dependency on external validation. When performed with sincerity, Padma Sadhana and Japa awaken the experience of being accompanied by the divine always. How can we cultivate the inner composure that Queen Elizabeth displays in turbulent times? Queen Elizabeth embodies equanimity, a quality cultivated by daily practice. Gurudev says, the sign of intelligence is how fast you bounce back from negative emotions. Sudarshan Kriya flushes out accumulated stress and brings us back to a centered state. Even when surrounded by crisis, as she keeps calm, not out of repression but out of composure. Breath based techniques improve emotional immunity, just like they do physical immunity. Regular meditation trains the nervous system to respond rather than react, essential for anyone in leadership. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna instructs Arjuna to become a Sthita Pragya, one whose wisdom is unwavering amidst pleasure and pain. Vedic rituals like Agni Karyam help burn inner restlessness. Upanayana initiates one into sacred disciplines that mold a character. Queen Elizabeth's composure echoes the archetype of the Rajarishi, one who leads with spiritual wisdom. Daily Gayatri Japa builds subtle armor, protecting emotional steadiness. Rituals teach emotional alchemy, turning the heat of life into the light of awareness. How can spiritual wisdom help us process personal sacrifice for the greater good? Gurudev often says sacrifice is not giving up something valuable, it is giving up something lesser for something greater. Queen Elizabeth sacrificed intimacy and freedom for the crown, not in bitterness but acceptance. This shift in perception comes through wisdom. When we do Sudarshan Kriya, the breath helps release grief and disappointment stored in ourselves. The heart becomes light when we understand the higher purpose behind our choices. Sacrifice transforms into seva or service. Spiritual practices shift the identity from me to we, allowing deeper fulfillment. Agni Karam is daily offering of oneself to higher ideals. In that spirit, personal discomfort becomes tapasya or austerity, a purifier of the soul. Vedic Dharma holds sacrifice as sacred when done consciously. Queen Elizabeth's life echoes the teachings of Lord Rama, who gave a personal choice for Dharma with rituals like Sandhya Vandanam and Trikal Sandhya. The practitioner repeatedly affirms, I am here to serve, not to enjoy alone. When such affirmations are empowered by japa and ritual, the pain of sacrifice turns into spiritual elevation. The crown portrays the strain between royal duty and personal relationships. How can spiritual tools help us navigate this balance? It's not about balance but integration. Gurudev teaches that when the mind is relaxed, we find enough time and energy for everything. Sudarshan Kriya helps us drop mental chatter and emotional heaviness so we are fully present with family as well as work. Queen Elizabeth's struggle was the inability to fully switch roles. Through mindfulness and breath, we can shift gracefully from king to parent, CEO to sibling. Meditation cultivates the art of presence, making each interaction meaningful without guilt or distraction. In Vedic culture, duties are classified as Pitru Rina, debt to ancestors, Deva Rina, debt to divine, and Rishi Rina, debt to wisdom. Family is not separate from dharma, it is a sacred obligation. Sandhya Vandanam grounds you three times daily to both worlds. Gayatri Japa harmonizes mental energies, allowing one to play all roles with grace. Queen Elizabeth lacked such tools, but we can embrace both family and mission without fragmentation using spiritual practices as a bridge between love and responsibility. The crown symbolizes responsibility. How can spiritual practices help one carry great burdens without collapse? Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankarji says responsibility is not a burden, it's a privilege. When the mind is expanded, responsibility becomes light. Queen Elizabeth wore the crown as a sacred commitment. Similarly, when one does Sudarshan Kriya, the breath energizes the system and releases stored fatigue. With regular sadhana, burdens are met with grace, not stress. Meditation restores mental elasticity, allowing one to respond freshly to repetitive pressure. Like the queen, a leader who centers in the self doesn't get drowned in duty. They rise through it. Wisdom reminds us we are not the doers, we are instruments of a higher will. In Vedic tradition, the Rajasavya Yagya was not just a ritual of kingship, but a deep inner surrender of ego. The crown is a symbol of dharmic commitment, not power. Through daily Trikal Sandhya, one aligns personal will with the divine rhythm. Agni Karam is a daily offering of your burden to the fire, reducing karmic load and enhancing subtle clarity. Gayatri Japa gives a ruler inner sight like the Chakshu or the divine eye mentioned in scriptures. The queen bore the weight alone, but with ritual mantras and Upanishadic contemplation, one never carries the weight alone, divinity shares it. So, how can we honor traditions without becoming trapped by them, as the crown often portrays? Traditions are meant to persevere and preserve wisdom, not suffocate innovation. Gurudev teaches honor the past, live in the present, and move to the future. The queen often upheld a protocol even when her heart differed. Practices like Sahat Samadhi and Padma Sadhana develop inner clarity and confidence. So you know when to follow and when to evolve. Breathwork clears generational conditioning, making you lighter. Through meditation, you stop reacting from habit and start acting from wisdom. When traditions serve growth, they become empowering. When they don't, they can be transformed respectfully, like Queen Elizabeth gradually did. In Vedic tradition, tradition is a parampara, a living, a breathing lineage. No rigidity, no continuity. Practices like Upanayana introduce one to sacred knowledge with the spirit of exploration, not stagnation. Sandhya Vandanam evolves with each generation yet maintains the essence in the crown. Prince Charles's clash with the monarchy shows tradition becoming burden, but in the Vedic path, the introspection is built in. Rituals like Sanyam Sadhana cultivate Viveka or discernment so one knows when to uphold and when to adapt. The true tradition doesn't imprison, it liberates when aligned with Dharma. What can spiritual practices teach us about using power with restraint as the Queen often does? Gurudev says power should come with humility, and restraint is the ornament of the wise. Elizabeth's ability to hold back words or decisions even under pressure reflects deep emotional mastery. This comes from a calm, centered mind. Sudarshan Kriya and meditation train the nervous system to stay composed amidst the provocation. Breath based practices cultivate patience. In leadership, you are constantly tempted to assert, dominate, or prove. But when you operate from inner fullness like the Queen does, you don't need to display control, you radiate it. Power held in stillness is more impactful than power spoken loudly. Vedic texts describe Shama or tranquility and Dhamma or control of senses as qualities of true leaders. Through Gayatri Japa, one invokes divine intellect before acting. Queen Elizabeth's restraint echoes Rajrishi Janaka, who ruled with inner silence. Agnikaram ritual is an act of restraint, offering desires to the fire before they become action. Sanyam sadhana, a meditative resilience and discipline of silence and observation, develops the inner space needed for wise restraint in the crown. Elizabeth's power lies not in doing but in choosing not to. Similarly, Vedic practices cultivate that sacred pause before action, the birthplace of dharma. How can spiritual tools help us navigate generational clashes like those shown between Elizabeth, Charles, and Diana? Every generation speaks a different emotional language. Gurudev says conflict arises when we don't listen beyond words. Queen Elizabeth struggled to understand Charles's sensitivity, and Charles struggled with his mother's stoicism. Spiritual practices like Sahat Samadhi bring deep empathy, listening with the heart. Sudarshan Kriya heals past emotional wounds, allowing us to meet loved ones freshly without the baggage of roles. Silence in meditation makes us better listeners in real life. When generational tensions arise, sadhana helps us transcend ego. One, I see perspective with compassion and bring healing instead of further misunderstanding. Vedic tradition honors Pitru Yagya, our duty to ancestors, and simultaneously encourages Rishi Yagya, absorbing evolving knowledge. Upanayana bridges this divide, transmitting timeless wisdom through a fresh lens. Queen Elizabeth and Charles represent the spiritual dilemma, conserving or reforming. Gayatri Japa alliances with the eternal mind beyond generations. Sandhya Vandanam creates inner clarity to honor tradition while remaining open to the heart's needs. Rituals are not just outer acts but tools for inner harmony. They remind us the goal isn't to agree but to connect with reverence regardless of time. The show explores the tension between one's public role and private self. How do spiritual practices reconcile these two identities? Gurudev explains that everyone plays roles, a leader, parent, friend, but behind them is the unchanging self. Meditation takes you beyond roles into the vast eternal you. Queen Elizabeth wore the persona of the monarch, often at the cost of her personal self with Sudarshan Kriya and Sahat Samadhi. One experiences the difference between I am the role and I am playing the role. This awareness brings freedom. You will perform responsibilities, but without losing yourself in them. In this inner detachment, you find peace amidst performance. In Vedic philosophy, the concept of neti neti or not this, guides us beyond roles. Trikalsandhya purifies the false identities gathered through the day. The queen's crisis was forgetting her humanness behind the crown. Rituals like Agnikaram symbolically burn the ego, realigning us with the Atman. Gayatri Japa illumines the inner being beyond personality. In spiritual maturity, one can wear the crown without becoming it, as Krishna guided Arjuna. Perform your duty, but know you are true nature in beyond body. That is the reconciliation, Jagudev. Jai Gurudev, the show portrays the tension between Queen Elizabeth's sense of duty and Princess Margaret's yearning for freedom. How can spiritual wisdom reconcile this conflict? His Holiness Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankarji reminds us true freedom lies within. Duty done in awareness becomes joy. Elizabeth embodies duty. Margaret sought personal freedom. Often we falsely think freedom means escaping rules, but with meditation and Sudarshan Kriya, one discovers inner expansiveness even while fulfilling responsibilities. When you are centered, duty doesn't feel binding, it becomes purposeful. Margaret's pain came from seeking freedom outside, while Elizabeth found peace in commitment. With practices like Sahat Samadhi meditation and Padma Sadhana, we learn to move from freedom inwards, not outwards, thus merging duty with joy. The Vedic lens sees Swadharma, or your unique path of responsibility, as freedom, not restraint. Queen and Margaret were living two ends of Swadharma. The Vedas prescribe Sandhya Vandanam and Gayatri Japa to align individual desires with cosmic rhythm. Agni Karam teaches us to surrender desires daily to the fire, purifying the inner space. Margaret's unrest reflects the mind without anchoring. With Sanyam Sadhana and silence and Upanayana, an initiation into spiritual responsibility, one moves from craving to contentment. Both sisters teach us balance inner liberation with outer rules, not escape them. How do spiritual tools help leaders and individuals navigate turbulent times, as shown during national crisis in the Crown? In times of crisis, be it war, disaster, or political upheaval, leaders like Queen Elizabeth become stabilizing forces. Gurudev says, "In the eye of the storm lies silence." Sudarshan Kriya helps access that inner and silent core. When the nervous system is calm, clarity returns even in chaos. Meditation prevents burnout while enabling timely, intelligent decisions. Queen Elizabeth often absorbed national grief silently. This is only possible through a steady inner state. Practices like Shakti Kriya and Sadhana were especially potent in such moments. They give inner strength to the light when the world is heavy. Vedic wisdom holds the dharma is upheld, especially during Kali Yuga times of strife, through inner rituals and outer integrity. When nations falter, individuals must become tapasvis, the people of inner fire and resilience. Trikal Sandhya connects you to the past, present, and future through prayer, anchoring the psyche beyond present fear. Gayatri Japa sharpens inner vision, enabling wise action. In the crown, Elizabeth doesn't act emotionally, she listens deeply. This is mauna or inner silence developed through Sanyam sadhana of level 1 and level 2. Every crisis calls not just for politics but also for poise. The Queen often grapples with her spiritual beliefs and her constitutional duties. How do we balance spirituality with the secular responsibility? Gurudev often reminds us that spirituality is not religion, it is the essence of who you are. Elizabeth's dilemma is universal: how to honor the soul while operating in a secular world. Through Sudarshan Kriya and Padma Sadhana, we discover our inner sanctity beyond institutions. Meditation brings a shift from ritualism to inner connection. Queen Elizabeth saw herself as chosen by divine will, but it was her introspection and silence that allowed her to lead ethically. Art of living practices help balance both spiritual depth and worldly effectiveness. In the Vedic understanding, the Rajarashi, the saint king, is ideal. He performs worldly duties while anchored in the absolute. Upanayana represents that moment of inner consecration where even secular roles are approached as sacred. Queen Elizabeth's struggles mirrors Yudhishthir's to uphold dharma while serving society. Agni Karam and Gayatri Japa allow one to perform duties with spiritual clarity. Through Agni Karam and Sandhya Vandanam, a leader constantly invokes divine intellect while remaining rooted in a practical reality. Dharma is never separate from governance, it is its soul. The Queen and Prince Philip's marriage shows deep strain and isolation. How can spiritual practices support relationships and heal loneliness? Gurudev teaches that loneliness is a signal to go deeper within. Elizabeth and Philip were both dignified yet often emotionally distant. Meditation, Sahat Samadhi, and Sudarshan Kriya help bridge such emotional gaps, not just with others but within ourselves. When we heal inner wounds, our external relationships shift too. Breathing techniques soften rigidity, bringing vulnerability and connection. Even in silence, love becomes present. In the crown, the queen finds solace in her dogs and horses with the sadhana. That same solace becomes accessible inside. Healing starts from within. Vedic rituals address both individual and relational imbalance. Agni Karam and Trikal Sandhya include offerings for harmony within family and society. Gayatri Mantra invokes inner illumination to see our partner with clarity, not projection. Sanyam Sadhana of level 1 and level 2 and Padma Sadhana develop emotional maturity, reducing neediness and expectations. In the Queen's case, her loneliness came from emotional suppression. The Vedas suggest a Maitri Bhavana, or cultivating loving kindness, as a form of worship. With consistent practice, even strained relationships become platforms for mutual growth. How does one stay centered amidst constant public scrutiny, as the Queen often had to endure? Gurudev says, praise and blame come like the wind. Don't lose your center. Queen Elizabeth lived under the microscope, yet maintained poised spiritual practices like Sudarshan Kriya and meditation. Build resilience against external opinions. When your worth isn't determined by applause or criticism, you remain free. This inner freedom is a gift of silence, breath, and satsang or spiritual company. Art of Living programs teach that you are much more than your image. You are consciousness itself. Knowing this, you stay unmoved amid storms. Vedic traditions emphasize Sthita Pragya, a personal of steady wisdom. Queen Elizabeth exemplified this quality. Trikal Sandhya and Gayatri Japa continuously purify the mind, dissolving the ego's need for validation. In ancient India, kings performed Agni Karyam before addressing the public, cleansing inner emotions so they could be just and unaffected. With Sanyam Sadhana of level 1 and level 2, one observes criticism without reaction. Whether when identity is rooted in the self, no public opinion, not public opinion, criticism becomes a mirror, not a threat. That's true sovereignty. Lord Mountbatten played a powerful role in shaping Prince Charles's future. How can mentorship be enriched through spiritual insight and practices? Mentorship isn't about control, it's about guidance with wisdom and compassion. His Holiness Gurudev Shri Shri Ravi Shankar Ji emphasizes that a true mentor awakens your inner potential, not dependence. In the crown, Mountbatten had noble intentions, but also personal projections. With meditation and Sudarshan Kriya, one becomes more intuitive and less opinionated in mentoring. An evolved mentor listens deeply and sees beyond the surface. Art of Living Such programs help both mentor and mentee grow together, fostering trust and discernment. The best mentoring happens not by molding but by witnessing with awareness. In the Vedic tradition, the Guru Shishya Parampara is sacred. Mentorship is founded on tapas, austerity, shraddha, faith, and viveka or discernment. Upanayam is literally the leading near of a student to truth. If Mountbatten had practiced Sandhya Vandanam or Gayatri Japa, his advice might have been more intuitive than tactical. True influence comes not from status but inner purity. Sanyam sadhana of level 1 and level 2 and Trikal Sandhya align mentors with divine will, removing ego based interference. A mentor becomes divine when they become a transparent instrument, not an architect of another's destiny. Prince Charles's lifelong challenge was being misunderstood and restrained. How can spiritual wisdom help align with their authentic self? Yes, Jayagurudev. Charles's inner conflict between personal passion and public role reflect a universal theme, the search for authenticity. Gurudev says you don't have to drop rules, just don't get stuck in them. Sudarshan Kriya clears mental fog and releases suppressed emotion, helping one reconnect to their core. In Charles's case, art, philosophy, and spiritual yearning were supposed and suppressed by royal rigidity, but with Sahat Samadhi meditation and Shakti Kriya, the individual blossoms naturally. You rediscover your rhythm, not by rebelling, but by relaxing into the self. Authenticity is your nature. It's not found, it's uncovered. In the Vedic lens, identity is layered or deha or body and manas or mind or buddhi and intellect and atma or soul. Charles was confused between manas and atma. Rituals like Sandhya Vandanam and Gayatri Japa sharpen discrimination between true self and conditioned roles. Agni Karyam burns false identity daily. In Sanyam Sadhana of level 1 and level 2, silence dissolves the outer noise, allowing the inner voice to speak. Had Charles undergone Upanayam in the traditional sense, receiving higher knowledge, he might have led with the inner confidence, not external approval. Vedic practices help restore our sacred individuality, not the egoic one. The queen repeatedly sacrifices personal desires for the crown. How can spiritual tools help leaders bear such personal cost with grace? Leadership often demands sacrifice. Gurudev has said a king's life is not his own, it belongs to the people. Queen Elizabeth mastered detachment, though it cost her relationships and personal freedom. But such sacrifice, when not rooted in inner silence, leads to emotional fatigue. Meditation, Sudarshan Kriya, and Padma Sadhana help leaders replenish their emotional reserves. Instead of feeling burdened, one begins to serve joyfully. The spiritual warrior is one who gives everything yet remains untouched. The queen endured because knowingly or unknowingly she was rooted in something greater than herself. The Rajarishi concept in Vedic tradition describes a sovereign who rules through spiritual sacrifice. Every royal act is a yajna, an offering. Agni Karyam is symbolic of this, placing personal desires into the fire for collective good. Trikal Sandhya allows a ruler to reflect daily on cosmic time and human impermanence. Queen Elizabeth's life shows a vairagya or detachment in action. With Gayatri Japa, a leader gains the ability to choose dharma over comfort. Spiritual discipline makes even loss feel like divine play. In sacrifice, the soul expands. How can spiritual practices empower women in leadership roles like Queen Elizabeth in a patriarchal institution? Gurudev has always celebrated feminine strength not as a reaction to patriarchy but as a complement to it. Queen Elizabeth didn't shout for power, she embodied it. Spiritual practices like Shakti Kriya awaken Shakti or divine feminine energy. In the crown, her calm strength often surpassed the noisy politics around her. Meditation builds inner poise, and Sudarshan Kriya clears emotional exhaustion. Art of Living says programs enable women to lead with the clarity, compassion, and conviction. True feminine leadership is inclusive, intuitive, and impactful, not competitive but cooperative. That's the power of inner stillness. In Vedic scriptures, women like Gargi, Maitri, and Sita were radiant leaders. Queen Elizabeth is a modern echo of that tradition. Upanayana for girls, which is being revived today, empowers them with Vedic wisdom early. Gayatri Japa align women with the higher intelligence. Sanyam sadhana of level 1 and level 2 deepens intuition, and Trikal Sandhya attunes one with the cosmic rhythm. The Queen's grace came from restraint, clarity, and strength, hallmarks of Vedic feminine energy. Spiritual tools give women the rootedness to rise above resistance, to lead without losing their softness. The crown often shows the gap between the old generation, Queen Philip, and younger ones like Charles and Diana. How can spiritual wisdom bridge generational divides? Gurudev says the older generation carries wisdom, the younger the dynamism. Both need to listen. In the crown, misunderstanding arises not from malice but from a lack of empathy. Meditation cultivates compassion and presence. Practices like Sudarshan Kriya reduce judgment, making room for dialogue. When breath softens, listening deepens. Elders stop imposing, youth stop rebelling. Art of Living programs often bring families together across generations by anchoring them in shared experience, not ideology. The breath is ageless, it unites everyone. Vedic culture bridges generations through shared rituals, Sandhya Vandanam, Agni Karyam, and Trikal Sandhya are family disciplines. These daily sadhanas naturally harmonize generational energies. Upanayana isn't just for youth, it's a reminder to elders to guide without control. Gayatri Japa sharpens mutual understanding. In Queen Elizabeth's case, the gap with Charles widened because ritual turned rigid. Vedic practices evolve with love, not law. When done together with intention and humility, spiritual tools rebuild bridges across time, lineage, and heart. Royals live under constant public scrutiny. How can individuals build resilience to judgment, criticism, and the weight of public opinion? Gurudev says, don't be a football of others' opinions. Queen Elizabeth, Diana, and even Charles were often crushed or elevated by the media. Sudarshan Kriya helps us drop emotional baggage and criticism like water off a lotus leaf. Meditation strengthens the inner anchor when rooted inside. External storms lose their power. In the crown, the characters who lacked breath based resilience spiraled, but those who stayed composed, like the queen, tapped into stillness. Our breath is the shield against public noise. Through regular practice, we transcend the need for validation. In the Vedic tradition, true indignity comes from Atma Bodha or self awareness. Sandhya Vandanam reminds us 3 times a day that we are not this body or public image. Agni Karyam purifies ego, fear, and pride. Queen Elizabeth exemplified mauna or dignified silence. A Vedic tool, Gayatri Japa, gives inner clarity to respond with wisdom, not reaction. Trikal Sandhya enables reflection on impermanence, so one doesn't overvalue fleeting praise or blame. Vedic Dharma teaches how to act with poise while being untouched, like the lotus in mud. Even under scrutiny, truth and purity radiate. Queen Elizabeth too consistently provides and prioritizes duty over desire. How can spiritual practices nurture unwavering integrity in leadership? Gurudev often says integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. The Queen's entire reign was marked by this. By sustaining integrity without burning. Burnout requires inner strength, meditation, Padma Sadhana, and Sudarshan Kriya rejuvenate the system so ethical choices don't feel like sacrifice. They feel natural. In The Crown, Elizabeth faces moral dilemmas yet returns to Dharma. Our programs teach clarity, neutrality, and non attachment, essential for leaders. Integrity becomes a lifestyle when you are inwardly full, not seeking gain. The Vedas describe a Rajarishi, a royal sage, who governs through inner dharma. Queen Elizabeth, while secular, lived a version of this. Sayam sadhana of level 1 and level 2 practices nurture restraint, and Upanayam connects the leader to cosmic law. When done daily, Trikalsandha helps foresee consequences, while Agni Karyam burns impurities of bias and fear. Integrity becomes effortless when actions align with divine will. In Vedic governance, it's not strategy but sattva or purity that sustains power. Queen Elizabeth succeeded because her commitment mirrored the qualities of a yogi king. The monarchy consistently and constantly negotiates between tradition and public and changing public sentiment. How can spiritual wisdom guide this balance? Gurudev says tradition is like the roots and modernity is the flower. One must not exist without the other. In The Crown, clashes between royal customs and modern India or youth create tension, but when you are anchored in inner silence, like through Sehat Samadhi meditation or Shakti Kriya, you naturally respect tradition while being creative with change. Art of Living programs teach adaptability without compromise. Queen Elizabeth preserved the monarchy, but not by clinging to the past, but by carrying its essence forward in modern form. That's the power of spiritual flexibility. Vedic Dharma's Sansthan is Sanatana, eternal, and also Ananta, infinite, and from rituals like Sandhya Vandanam or Agni Karyam have lasted millennia because they evolve with time. Queen Elizabeth's effort to modernize coronation, broadcast, or welcome diverse leaders echoed the spirit. Gayatri Japa tunes intellect to discern which traditions carry wisdom and which need renewal. Trikal Sandhya trains the mind to see across past, present, and future. The monarchy's strength lies in embodying the Ratha, the cosmic order, while expressing it uniquely in each state. Vedic wisdom is not frozen, it is a living tradition. The queen often finds herself isolated. How can spiritual practices help leaders navigate emotional solitude without inner collapse? Leadership can be lonely at the top. Gurudev shares solitude is the mother of wisdom. Loneliness is the absence of self. Queen Elizabeth bears this distinction powerfully. In The Crown, her solitude becomes a strength when she anchors into her dharma. Meditation and Sudarshan Kriya help individuals feel complete within themselves. You begin to experience inner joy, not needing external approval or company to feel whole. Emotional resilience grows naturally. Silence, when embraced with wisdom, becomes blissful, not a burden. In Vedic life, Sanyam sadhana of level 1 and level 2 is not escape but immersion in the soul. Queen Elizabeth's calm and chaos reflects the power of inner sanctity. Upanayam links one to the ultimate guru, divine consciousness. So even in solitude, one feels held. Sandhya Vandanam is a conversation with the divine 3 times a day. Gayatri Japa awakens the heart and fills the void. True kingship, according to scriptures, begins when ego dissolves in sacred solitude. Leaders who embrace spiritual loneliness discover divine companionship, and that makes them unshakable. Royals are trained to hide grief. How can spiritual tools help release pain while maintaining dignity and composure? Separation is not strength. Gurudev says pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. In The Crown, the queen often buries emotions for the sake of decorum, especially after tragedies like Aberfan. This unprocessed grief quietly burdens the heart. Sudarshan Kriya allows emotions to move through the system without drama or denial. Padma Sadhana reconnects the body to breath and subtle sensations, and asanas, gently allowing grief to dissolve. Meditation makes it safe to feel and strong enough to let go. Dignity and vulnerability are not opposites, they coexist in the spiritually awake. Vedic practices never ignore emotion, they sanctify it. Agni Karyam includes offering emotions into fire. Trikal Sandhya creates space to reflect more in surrender, and Gayatri Japa brings clarity to emotional chaos. Queen Elizabeth's stoicism resembled the ancient Raj Rishis' approach, restrained yet deeply sensitive. But without daily spiritual release, grief accumulates. In the Vedic path, rituals like Shraddha and Tarpana are emotional outlets in the sacred form. Leaders must grieve, but in such a way that their grief transforms into prayer, and pain becomes compassion. Thank you, Jai Gurudev.